Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
As we come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. and the United States, as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And one of those areas that we have to cover as we go towards 2050, and we have a planet of some 9 billion people, how are we going to be able to transport all these people and make sure that they have fulfilled lives, they're able to do their work, recreate, and in general have a higher quality of living? And the gentleman sitting right beside me has been doing this for quite a few years, and actually he's third generation, and they've had their first 100 years, and now you're getting ready for your next 100 years, Gerry Murphy.
We are indeed.
And this is Gerard, Gerry N. Murphy. He's an attorney at law and president emeritus of the Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association, WANADA. And it's good to have you back.
Thanks, Sam. Good to be with you.
I'm always glad to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about WANADA. What is it? Why is it important? We'll talk about a little bit of the first 100 years, and then let's get into the next 100 years.
WANADA, Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association, been around, 100 years.
Yeah.
1917 was when it was founded in the District of Columbia, and then it came into the market of metropolitan Washington, which is one of the most important automobile dealer markets in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it's a great organization.
Yeah.
And I've been part of that since, since I graduated from college, which, as you can see by looking at me, was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, just a couple of years ago. But the whole thing about it, there's something very special. You're what's called a Tier 1 show.
Yes,
so
sir.
you have international standing in all this.
We do.
But also you have a special focus on policy, not just the automobiles and the vehicles themselves. Tell us about this policy emphasis. Why Washington, D.C., and why this is so special for WANADA?
Well, to your point, the Washington Auto Show is one of the foremost auto shows on the auto show global circuit, the industry global circuit. And it is because it's Washington, and Washington is arguably the capital of the world. And this market in metropolitan Washington is very important, but again, because it's Washington that makes, our auto show so important. It's right here. I mean, you got the White House down the street, you got the United States Congress down the street, you got the entire, federal establishment down the street, and, for better or worse, the federal government in the United States is the partner right in bed with the automobile industry because they regulate it, not just in America, but because of their reach and the importance of the American automobile market. They are very instrumental in shaping the cars that we drive.
Yeah, and the whole thing is the cars that are being driven all over the globe, and that's where you're going with that whole thing, is that it really is a global market.
No question.
In the first 100 years, what were some of the things that you saw, because again, your grandfather, your dad, and yourself, and of course now it's moving on, that you saw, and the changes that you saw that really has led us to where we're going to be as far as the next 100 years?
Well, I've always been around a few of those 100 years. You can see by looking at me that I'm a very young man. Mm-hmm. But in fact, you're right. I've been with my organization, Washington Area New Auto Dealers Association. My dad was my predecessor, and Mom was delighted that he hired me because we weren't sure what I was going to do when I finished college and was looking for a job. And my granddad preceded my father. So we're three generations.
That's correct.
And that goes back over those 100 years of the automobile business in metropolitan Washington. My granddad was an automobile dealer in the District of Columbia. The association didn't have a chief of staff in the early years. My granddad became the chief of staff when he lost his business in the Depression in 1929, and you know the rest is history. But the association that I work for and that my forebears work for is really sort of encapsulated the automobile business in metropolitan Washington, which is one of the strongest, most vibrant automobile dealer markets in the country.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it, it's right here where all the policymakers are.
Indeed.
And one of the, the other two areas that we didn't mention was the lobbyist.
Yes.
And there's thousands of them.
Yep.
That interact with the automobile industry, and of course the media.
Right.
And the media is critically important to all this as far as the automobile industry is concerned. So looking at the first 100 years, how did you see the government, the White House, media, the lobbyist, and then of course the dealers, which have great influence in local communities, throughout the whole metropolitan area. How did all that mesh together to really formulate the industry as we know it today?
Well, the public policy aspect of the automobile industry sort of came up over time. I'm not sure it was as profound in the beginning of the auto industry, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, arguably the 50s, but certainly in the 60s, 70s, and beyond. The public policy aspect of the automobile industry really came into its own to the extent that the relationship between the government, the federal government, the U.S. government with the automobile industry has been profound insofar as cars are designed by federal regulations and laws that are passed. I mean, all of the safety devices that are in the cars that we've all take for granted today were regulated or legislated, back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, and for the better. I mean, the cars today are safer than they otherwise would have been if there had been no regulations. It was isn't to say that the people that are injured and killed in automobiles is anything that we can wink at. We can't. It's awful, but it's been kept in check, I would argue, by the good regulations of the automobile industry and the automobile products that have come down, from the U.S. government.
Yeah, and the last factor of all this, of course, are the consumers.
Right.
The people that are buying the automobiles. So looking at how do they get their input into what the automobile of the next year or the next cycle is going to be, and then how does all this mesh with legislation, the lobbyists who are trying to represent both the consumers, the industry, the government, and then the media. How does all that fit together to make a dynamic industry, which the automobile industry certainly is?
No question. Well, I mean, America's love affair with the car goes back all the way to the 1920s and is pervaded over all these years. And the automobile, the way it's been designed and what customers are looking for, there are people within the auto industry who design, the features, and the features have really been amazing in the last few years, to the extent that you have all the onboard computerization that's in cars today.
Yeah.
You got people talking to you in the car. Hopefully not too much, because that can be distracting.
Right.
And you don't want to be distracted while you're driving. But I mean, all the onboard electronics that are in the car that make the car much more than going from point A to point B. I mean, you've got the radio system, the stereo system. You've got all of the various safety things that are in the car, you know, that tell you if you're getting too close to this lane over here, or you're getting too close to that lane. It'll even brake the car for you if, you know, perchance you've fallen asleep. It's amazing, and it's good, and again, it underlies the reality of America's love affair with the car, because people love their cars. There's never going to come a time, I mean, you hear all this about, you know, autonomous cars and the rest of it, and that's Buck Rogers, in my humble opinion. I don't see, you know, cars without drivers. I think, particularly in America, the love affair with a car, people like to have their own car. They like to drive their own car. And the industry is attuned to that, and all of the high technology that goes into the cars today excites consumers and makes America's love affair with a car continuing.
Yeah, and just looking at this photograph here, you can see just the great numbers of people coming out and pouring over the vehicles and all that.
That's
educating
our Washington Auto Show right
Yes,
there.
absolutely, and educating themselves as far as what's going on. We're about out of time. What do you see for the next 100 years as far as change in the technology, but also maybe the changes in the marketplace, what people may want to move away from as far as the automobile, and we've got about 1 minute to do that.
I don't see America's love affair with a car changing an iota. I think people will continue to embrace, you know, their automobiles. Yes, I mean, the technology, the high technology will continue on. There's no question about that. And cars will become safer, more fuel efficient. Cars today are incredibly fuel efficient with the, you know, the alternative fuels that are out there.
Right.
And it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Well, looking at your future and what you're doing as far as the organization, what do you see as far as your input into the future? And we got about 20 seconds.
I'm going to continue to be involved in the automobile industry because I've been involved in it my whole life, my whole career. I love the automobile industry, and I'm going to be here trying to make it better for consumers.
That's fantastic. Well, this is Gerard, Gerry N. Murphy, who is attorney at law and president emeritus. I love that title that you have there. CAE, Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association, WANADA. And thank you, viewers, for being with us as we look at the past 100 years and the next 100 years as far as the eyes of Gerry Murphy and the consumers that we see right here in this photograph as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid.
A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed.
I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close.
I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us.
But I know it's all gonna be worth it.
I just want my family to be safe.
But these are not my words.
These are not my words.
These are not my words.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Homeless minds. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
When it comes to saving money,
What?
don't act like a baby.
Oh, it's like they're having their own little meeting. This is so humiliating.
Be the boss
I'm the boss.
What the?
Power nap. You were saying.
and make a budget.
Let's get to work.
Need a little help?
Stacy, read back the notes.
I can't read. What's it say?
Create a personalized savings plan and get other tools and tips
We can share.
You obviously didn't go to business school.
at feedthepig.org.
We're back to the Emerald Planet. Here again, your host.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we're looking for those, what we call the 1,000 best practices, the best of the best, as we look around the globe in 144 different nations and looking right here in our own local region, the National Capital Region of Washington, D.C. And we're looking at the whole topic of transportation as far as individuals, but that may be morphing into something that's way beyond what we can even understand today. Many of us think about flying cars and levitation and all these other kinds of ways of moving people. But a gentleman sitting right beside me has been a number of years of making sure that he's getting people to where they want to go in style, at the same time in safety, comfort, and allow them to not only enjoy it for the work that they get out of their automobiles and their vehicles, but also how that impacts on their family. This is Charles. He goes by Charlie S. Stringfellow Jr. He's ex officio chairman, board of directors for WANADA, which is the Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association. And also he's vice president of dealer operations for Antwerpen Auto Group. And welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Sam, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Because you've been with us before, and we're always glad to have you back. But tell us a little bit about being chairman of the board of directors for WANADA. What does that mean, and what does WANADA mean to not just to the industry, but to the public?
WANADA has an integral role in representing the dealer network as a whole in the Washington metropolitan area, and helps bring together the jurisdictions of Virginia, the district, and Maryland, and keeps the dealers informed of what's going on. It also is important in outreach to the public, in working with the various jurisdictions on matters that are important not only to the public, but to the dealer and to the community as a whole, and try to bring all that together in one nice, neat package.
Now, the automobile industry is critically important to the economy of not only just this region, but the whole United States and really for the whole world. So looking at the board itself and its representation again for the dealer network and all that means as far as the manufacturers, but also for the consumer, how do you bridge that so that everyone has an equal voice and they feel like that they're being listened to and it comes out with something that's better for the public, for the industry, and literally for the government, which is all part of this whole process too?
Well, if we look at the industry and we look at a spectrum and we look at the far left, the far right, and not speaking politically, but regulators and people in government and people that are in tune with safety, reliability, and environmental responsibility, look at things that they feel are important for the global situation. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the consumer, and the consumer wants what the consumer wants. So between that and the two ends, you have the dealer to satisfy the consumer needs, and you have the manufacturer who has to build what they're told to build and what is compliant, and at the same time build what the public wants. And therein lies some of the juxtaposition of what we're seeing in. It's been ongoing in industry for years, but as things become more regulated and more involved, and we become smarter about what we're doing, these different things are finding their way into the car. Some of them more readily accepted than others at the consumer end of the transaction, so to speak.
Yeah, and the whole thing about this is having this interaction between the consumers, the government, the industry, i.e. the manufacturers, but there's a whole host of other people. People don't realize just how pervasive the automobile industry is. You know, you look at all the financial institutions, the credit unions, the banks, You look at the investments as far as what the dealers are putting into their physical plant in their own local communities and how they reach out into the community, because many of them are some of the major supporters of, Little League and, the various activities in schools and all these kinds of things. So when you look at it from that standpoint, how do all these competing interests work out so that actually the community feels like, they're valuable members of the community, meaning the industry itself, and at the same time, the consumers are getting the type of product, because you talk about this almost cognitive dissonance between, what the consumer wants and what's being manufactured. How does that mesh? And going back to your role as the board of directors for WANADA.
Well, WANADA cannot dictate to the manufacturers. They're in a supportive role, and and we are a voice. I think the biggest visible showing of that is during the Washington Auto Show. Is that prior to the show we have public policy days, and prior to public policy days this year we had mobility talks. And that is the opportunity, and therein is where WANADA proves its great worth to the community, because we bring together all the various disciplines into a common forum and format, and we talk about things like that, things that are important to the consumer, important to government, important for the environment, and how to make it all work, and to do it in such a way that we're all working in concert with one another, not working at odds with one another. And to the competitive side of things, the manufacturers, each manufacturer wants to be the first or near the first to the market with various things. They certainly don't want to be the last, so they have to be cognizant of their research and development dollars and some of the things that they're doing and how it all ties into the car and into the comfort, convenience, safety, reliability that people have come to expect from their automobiles these days.
Yeah, well, you're vice president of Antwerpen Auto Group, and at the same time you're serving in this the role of being on the board of directors. So you've had a wealth of experience over 40 years in the industry. How does that get translated back into the board, which many of the dealers are actually on that board, so that wisdom, that knowledge then goes to the manufacturers, it goes to the consumers, and it's not just for the benefit of the dealers, but it's almost like it's a common good for the whole community.
Well, the board brings together representatives from around the Beltway, so we cover the market very thoroughly in our representation. And issues that one dealer will experience, another dealer most likely will experience, and as we bring those to the board in our meetings, we're able to identify problems, real problems that the dealers face in dealing with the various jurisdictions or the manufacturer or whatever it might be. So we unify as a common voice, and the group always gets a better play, so to speak, than the individual. And therein lies one of the strengths of the association.
Yeah. Now, looking at the consumer, I know because being at the dealer level, you're seeing customers on a day in, day out. And these are, across the board as far as the community is concerned. So how does that interaction that you have on a day-to-day basis then get fed back into, say, the manufacturers, into the dealers association, so that the customer, the consumer, feels like, hey, somebody is really listening to us. We need to have these kinds of things that are important to us, and you're hearing it over and over and over from the customer. And then there's some kind of reaction in a positive way, so that then they feel like that you really are listening to what their opinions and their voice may be.
The consumer speaks most vocally with his or her pocketbook. In the car or cars, vehicle, the sport utility, the crossover, the truck, whatever it is that they want to buy. And that demand by the public dictates and becomes the voice to the manufacturers about what they want, what the consumer wants. And that is driving the market. For example, today, the crossover market has become very, very popular, and it is eclipsing passenger cars as a volume sales leader. And that's the direction consumers want to go. and manufacturers have to respond to that, so they are constantly shifting production schedules and moving things around to the extent that they can because of certainly the long lead times they have to commit to raw materials and things that go into vehicles. So that's the way the market is driven, and that's the voice we try to convey up the line from our perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at fuel efficiency, this is something that's been a moving target. You have these CAFE standards that have been set as far as the miles per gallon and all that. The consumer is saying we want a very energy efficient car. We want less expendables, i.e. on fuel and oils and these other kinds of things. And yet at the same time, you're saying the crossover market, pickups, some of these heavier vehicles are still in high demand as far as the consumer. How is that being balanced out so that you're getting the fuel efficiency and you're meeting the standards as far as the environment is concerned, which is what EmeraldPlanet's all about. Yes. At the same time, to have the comfort, the safety, the style, the people-pleasing aspects of the automobile, whatever that may be, for the consumer.
Well, that translates into the fuel efficiency translates into the technology that we see today. We're getting the same performance, power, and reliability out of four-cylinder engines, either normally aspirated or with turbocharging, that we got out of the V6s and V8s or the inline sixes of yesteryear. So the performance is there, and with that smaller displacement engine, the fuel economy is there. Marry that with some of the hybrid technology that we're seeing today, and it's driving the fuel, or bringing the fuel economy numbers up to be compliant with where the government says they need to be. That plus the model mix is important. Now, from a standpoint of where the industry is today, there are roughly, I believe it's 266 million internal combustion engines registered across the United States.
My goodness. What's that number again?
I think it's 266 million.
Wow,
so
that's incredible.
They're here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Right.
Electric vehicles last year were 0.6% of registration. So they're getting a lot of press, a lot of play, and a lot of recognition. However, in the real world, they're just a fraction of what's being sold in the market. And the point is that the internal combustion engine, with all of the improvements that we've seen over the last 100 or so years of their existence, we've really made great strides in the last few years.
We've just run out of time, maybe 15 seconds. What do you see for your future as you move forward?
I see the industry is strong. It's going to continue to be strong, and I think we'll be in for a good year.
That's fantastic. This is Charlie Stringfellow Jr., ex-officio chairman, board of directors, WANADA, and also with Antwerpen Auto Group. Thank you for being with us, Charlie, as we create the EmeraldPlanet.
For all the papas out there, let's stop what we're doing and take a moment to be with our kids. They can be loud moments, goofy moments, dorky moments. It doesn't really matter. Every time dads take a moment to be with their kids, it's pretty momentous. So let's all take a moment to make a moment today.
Hey, did you know that 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Go to theshelterpetproject.org and search your local shelters and rescues. Go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
We cannot be bystanders.
We can stop to make sure someone is okay.
We can warn someone when their drink isn't safe.
And disrupt the situation.
We can.
Get someone the cab.
Or walk them home safely.
We can make campuses safer for our friends.
Our roommates.
Our classmates. Our fellow human beings.
We cannot be bystanders.
We can. Intervene.
It's on us.
All of us.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
When it comes to saving money,
What?
don't act like a baby.
Oh, it's like they're having their own little meeting.
This is so humiliating.
Be the boss.
I'm the boss.
What the?
Power nap.
You were saying?
And make a budget.
Let's get to work.
Need a little help?
Stacy, read back the notes.
I can't read. What's it say?
Create a personalized savings plan and get other tools and tips
We can share.
You obviously didn't go to business school.
at feedthepig.org.
We're back to the Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, welcome back to the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technology, service, products, and the people, of course, are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And we're talking about transportation. How are we going to move 9 billion people? Yes, 9 billion people by 2050. Possibly there'll be 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century. And I have a gentleman who's thinking about that a lot and actually doing things about it. This is Redden. He's been on Emerald Planet before, and welcome back, Harold. He's the chair of the Automotive Dealers Education Institute, ADEI, and general manager for the Fitzgerald Lakeforest Toyota. And we're glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, looking at this Automotive Dealers Education Institute, tell us a little bit about what is that, and then what we want to do is get into why that's so important, because the marketplace is very dynamic, great changes in the industry with the manufacturers, fuel economy, consumer demands, and at the same time, great demands as far as having the correct employees working in the dealerships and the community. So we want to flesh all that out and see how we balance that.
Sure. Well, the WANADA Auto Technicians Program, the ADEI, is a cooperative program between the trade association, dealers, and the local colleges or high schools, depending on what jurisdiction we're in. And it provides the student with the opportunity to get full technician credentials by simply pairing up with the dealership, being in the school 1 or 2 days a week and working in the dealership the balance of the time. So they get their full education in 5 semesters, 2.5 years. And the industry right now, and has been for quite some time, had a shortage of qualified technicians.
Yeah.
So it's very important to the dealers.
Yeah, and the whole thing about this, Harold, is the education. If you look at it, and I just wrote this down as far as what we're talking about, revolution in automotive technologies equals revolution in education for the technicians, the managers, support staff, dealership owners, and we ought to go all the way down to consumers as well, because many of the consumers that in the old days would be able to fix their car, they go out and in their own garage and all that, that's almost all gone.
Well, it is, because in the modern auto technology world, you need equipment. The computers pretty much drive the whole vehicle, and without having that equipment and specialized training, there's just really a certain level of things that can't be done anymore at home.
Now, looking at the ADEI, what is the kind of people that you're looking for? Because I know it's open now to women to come in to be automotive technicians, and then they can go anywhere they want to go as far as management and other kinds of things. But what are you looking for initially, and then how can they progress over their life in this very active and very dynamic automotive industry?
Well, first I'd like to say that for as long as I've been involved in the automobile business and auto technology education, women have always been a pretty big part of it. And throughout our dealerships, we have numerous ladies that work in this field and do very well. And so a lot of times it starts when they're in high school, and many choose to take an auto technology curriculum, and it helps them understand whether, number one, if it's the right thing for them, it's discovery. And then when that individual finishes their secondary education, some of them intend to go further, but some of them want to go right into the work world. And some of them have to go right into the work world. So our program is particularly geared for people that need to earn money and also get an automotive education. And one of the great things about what we do is that at the end of all this, those folks do not have a college loan like so many people do that go on to post-secondary education.
Yeah, and looking at this, the automobiles are becoming much more sophisticated. What I affectionately say is that you have this huge computer and also there's a car attached to it, or a truck or SUV.
Exactly.
So looking at this demand as far as the technologies that there are people doing, you know, one day, not too many years ago, people looked at auto mechanics and others as, well, this is something that they had to do, and, you know, versus going to college or whatever. Now you have a whole track where people are actually competing to get into the educational courses because the pay is quite high and it's very secure. So what are you looking at, and then how do you keep them into the industry so that they're growing along with you and you're not having to constantly replace people that need to be very proficient in technology?
Well, it's interesting. We've got cars now that have anti-collision avoidance features that cause the brakes to come on, forward radar, lane departure warning, lane keeping assist. All of those new technologies require training for our technicians. In addition to that, we have alternative fuels, electric cars, as Charlie mentioned, and we have hybrids and plug-in hybrids, and our manufacturers, although not in this area because we lack the infrastructure, sell hydrogen vehicles in some parts of the country. All of those new technologies require specialized training, especially in the area of diagnosis. And the great thing is our program is NATEF approved, and NATEF is an organization that works in conjunction with ASE, Auto Service Excellence, the little badge you see on the technician's shoulder.
And that really means something.
It means a lot.
It means a lot.
It means a lot. And the curriculum portion, NATEF, continually makes sure our curriculum is state of the industry, which is really, really important. So yes, the ASC certification is essential to be successful as an auto technician.
Yeah, and I put this this image up here because I know this is dealing with the auto body and the constant repairs as far as what's going on with the cars. And this is something that's very important that, you know, it looks like it's fun, but this is very real, and this is competition that people have as far as the design. How do you take these very advanced vehicles that are really huge computers and then move them forward to where they are actually in the industry, but also they're helping to grow and expand the industry. So looking at the dynamics of this car we have in front of us, what is behind all of this that's actually where these technicians are going in the future? This looks very powerful, it's very colorful, but this is really serious.
It really is.
And so looking at this in a serious manner, how does this translate to these technicians, male, female, that are coming up through the ranks in the dealerships?
You're referring to the Corvette with the multicolored...
Exactly.
Well, underneath that skin is a huge amount of technology that many of it hasn't been out for 2 or 3 years. And the serious technician will really have to be at the top of the game to be able to diagnose and maintain that car.
Yeah, and the whole thing is that people think of this as a computers. Actually, there's multiple computers in all these various vehicles, and this is something that we don't really understand the complexity of these new technicians that are coming out of your ADEI. So how are you preparing them? You're saying it's 2.5 years.
2.5
Then they
years.
actually, and of course it's like an apprenticeship, so they're actually working in the dealerships, I believe,
So they
and
come in-
studying, correct?
They come into the dealership and they work 5 days a week, go to the school 1 day, or in some cases 2 days in the school and 4 days in the dealership. And they complete their studies while working with certified technician mentors in the dealership. And so the combination of the classroom, the experience in the dealership, and the curriculum, you know, is strong enough to cause them to get educated to that level, the master ASE certification level, in 2.5 years.
And that's incredible. But looking at this mentorship, tell us about this mentorship, why that is so important, and how do you select the mentors then are working with these young technicians, whether at high school or at the college level?
Well, the mentors in the dealership, you know, the first criteria is they have to want to work with young students. They have to feel good about helping others along. So that's That's the #1 ingredient. And then, of course, they've got to be expert technicians. And they have to be disciplined enough to allow those students to do their lessons rather than the next job that's at the dealership.
Yeah.
So we got to let them stay on the course of their education. So sometimes that relates to not being as efficient. But in the end, that's where the learning happens.
Yeah, yeah. And also, too, looking at this as far as this, the green car, you know, the awards that come out of the magazine, why is this so important? And again, how does this relate back to these young technicians? That each year these green cars are being identified, and then all this information is being shared with the public, but also back into the industry itself.
Well, certainly as cars evolve, they're becoming more economical, and these students that are turning into technicians need to learn to work on those systems to be able to maintain that. We have pickup trucks now that real fuel economy get over 20 miles to the gallon combination city highway, which was unheard of a couple of years ago. Those engines go into 8-cylinder. They start as 8 cylinders and they go to 4 cylinders, and then back to 8 cylinders. And it's all because of the computer, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at these new designs, I tell you, these are just incredible looking vehicles, but these really are getting to the people movers of the future. So I'm taking away, the trucks, the cars, the SUV designation, just say people movers, because that's what you're really looking at, I believe. So how is this morphing, and how is the industry changing so that people are actually getting the vehicles that they really want? And you got this whole complexity out there behind this to make all this work.
Well, one thing that I experience, and maybe a little off the thread that you're talking about, but when gas goes up around $4 a gallon, the hybrids, the plug-in hybrids, the small, compact, fuel-efficient cars, that's about the tipping point, and they become very popular. When gas is sitting where it is right now, around $2.50, people will tolerate a fuel-efficient, larger vehicle. As Charlie said in the earlier segment, the CUV, the compact utility vehicle, is one of the fastest growing segments, even faster than the passenger cars. And so that is all kind of controlled by the fuel costs.
Yeah. Now looking at this is all about the new plug-in hybrids, and of course more and more in the world they're going to all electrics. In other words, China has mandated within the next 20, 30 years all their cars are going to be 100% electric. So looking at what we have here, how does all this technology, are you seeing this being translated? Is this something that's being keep pushing because the fuel prices are low at this time? Or is the technology improving itself in this time? Oh, we just ran out of time. Yep.
I think that the technology would advance faster if the fuel cost was more expensive.
Yeah, okay. Harold Redden, Chair of the Automotive Dealers Education Institute, ADEI. Thank you for being with us, talking about all this new technology. Too much to cover in one show. Thank you as we create the Emerald Planet.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe in 144 different nations looking for those 1,000 best practices, what we call the best of the best. And also we're looking for the people that really are opinion makers not only in the United States but around the globe and also actually influence whole industries. And I'm very pleased to have a gentleman sitting right beside me that's been doing that for a number of years. This is Warren Brown. He's the automotive columnist for the Washington Post Emeritus. And he also has a live online, what's called Real Wheels blog. And then he's also a Lifetime Achievement Awardee of Urban Wheel Awards and many other things. I just ran out of space on my piece of paper here. I couldn't put it all down. But Warren, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV.
It's good to be back.
Now, looking at, and I wanted you to come on and talk about this, the automobile industry is going through profound change.
Profound changes.
Profound change. So what we want to do is let's take a little walk back in memory lane where we were, say, over the last 5, 10, 15 years, the changes that we saw. And then we want to leap into the deep end of the pool and talk about what you see because you have, decades of, divining all this information and where you see us going in the future. So let's look back and then we're going to jump forward.
Well, when we look back, we look at a very traditional manufacturer, retail type of business. The car companies make the cars, they sell them to the dealers find a way of getting them to us.
The consumers.
Yeah, to the consumers. The traditional way this industry operated, and it looked at things like prestige. It looked at, even the commercials, TV commercials you see now, are what I call 0 to 60 commercials, zoom, zoom, zoom. That's not the real world anymore. Prestige really doesn't mean what it once meant. Most people, particularly people my age, and I'm 70 years old and I speak to a lot of them, they don't really care what you care about them vis-a-vis their car. That car, reflects a certain image. All they want is something that is safe, attractive, comfortable, fuel efficient, and works. I now live in the community of former law enforcement officers and military people, former military people. And they tell me, don't you dare go zoom, zoom out of this complex. Speed limit is 30 miles an hour getting out, and that's what you do. That's what they want. That's where they are in life. If I get a high performance car, so to speak, and go zoom, zooming out of the neighborhood, I'll hear about it.
You'll be in trouble.
I'll be in trouble.
Yeah, and if you go zoom, zoom, trying to get back into the neighborhood, you're going to hear about it.
Yes, yes. And it's not because they want to control, it's because of what life really is now. You've traveled all around the world, and still do. I don't know how you still do it, but you still do it. I've traveled all around the world. And when I see, when you're in a country like, say, Kazakhstan. They are very careful about how fast you're going to be going on their highways. As a matter of fact, the law enforcement people there have a habit of, after a very ugly crash, a serious crash, they'll take out the humans, help them as best they can, and leave the cars as they crashed. You know, as a visual warning.
Yeah, I was just in.
You've seen this.
Yeah, I was in India for a month, just back, and a number of different highways. You would see them. They would actually, a car was just destroyed to smithereens. They left it right there on the edge of the road as a symbol to everybody else. Look, if you're driving too fast, this may happen to you. Don't do it.
And Moscow, for example, has a very interesting display. It's an all-metal vodka bottle built with car parts destroyed in the crash. And it's right outside of the, for lack of a better term for me, the civic center there in Moscow. And why? They're telling you don't drink and drive. You know, and so how we relate to cars, you know, the so-called American love affair cars, changing. You have kids, right? They are not going to try to figure a monthly car payment plan into their budget. They don't have to.
Yeah.
You know,
this is the shared economy.
It's a shared economy. They want access to transportation, but they don't want to own it if it's going to just sit there for 5 or 6 hours a day, just sitting in somebody's parking lot.
Yeah. And that's where I really wanted to go with this. Okay, so we have what we know about in the past. People are buying their automobiles. They use it maybe 10, 15% of the time. The rest of the time it's just sitting somewhere, and they're paying, you know, for the payments, for the maintenance, for the actual land that the automobile, you know, all this is a dead cost in many cases. But the young generation are looking at where you talk about the shared economy. They want, as you said, Warren, access, but they don't want to have to own it, and they want to be able to share and expense whatever that transportation cost is with a greater number of people. So how do you see this playing out, say, over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years as far as new generations coming in and the older generations actually getting out of automobiles, just like what you're talking about?
You'll see companies such as Uber and Lyft and GM has a version of that called Maven, M-A-V-N. Those kind of companies will expand, you know, where the individual doesn't own the car, but basically has access to it. You now see dealers, some of my favorite people are car dealers, and I was wondering how would they adapt to this. They have something now called the subscription service.
Subscription service, okay.
Subscription, yeah. Okay, and that means that today I might want a compact utility vehicle. Tomorrow I might want a regular utility vehicle. Possibly I might want, at some other time, sedan.
Or a pickup truck.
Or a pickup truck. I don't buy them. What I do is I sign the contract for a certain period of time, saying that, okay, let's say I have a 2-year contract. First 4 months of that contract, I might want to drive a CUV. Next 4 months, I might want to drive a truck, pickup truck, regular. I probably would never want to drive seriously an expensive, high-performance sports car, which why manufacturers are declining the production of those cars. Production declining with price increasing of those cars, because they still want to make money, right?
Exactly.
But not that many people want to own a Corvette or a Porsche because it's too expensive, which is another point that manufacturers are working on. The average price of a new car, transaction price, out the door, $34,800, moving up to $36,000. That's a lot of money, Sam.
It is, particularly something as you're only using a very small portion of the time.
So what do? How long does it take to pay for that? Now, you're right now in an area, the Washington metropolitan area, where people can play with play with 70-month loans or 80-month loans, and that's where it's going. But not, particularly young people, they don't want to be under a 70-month loan or an 80-month loan.
Well, also too, I think the whole thing, Warren, is that with the concern for the environment. We have an expanding population in the United States, many other countries. They want to protect the environment. They sincerely want to protect the environment.
Yes.
And they feel like everybody having their own car is not a way to go there. So looking at this change, we have less than a minute. How do you see the environment, the economy, and the natural change in attitudes towards ownership impacting the next 5, 10, 15, even 20 years?
Excuse me. More shared cars, less ownership of high-performance cars. As I told you, I live in a neighborhood right now that if I did high performance, it would be known before I got back there. More fuel-efficient cars. And you are going to have a growth in electric cars, but that also requires a growth in a more sophisticated infrastructure. Transponders that talk to cars and what have you. That takes time, that takes money. A lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah. Warren, we're just out of time. Thank you for being here. And the whole thing about this, where we're going, I know your real wheels is really getting at these critical issues. And thank you for doing all that, because it's very important, the work that you're doing, that you've been doing. And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.